Jake Murphy stood at the big window of the space station. He watched ships arrive from all over the galaxy. Each ship looked different. Some were long and silver, others were dark and covered in spikes. A few glowed with strange colors that hurt to look at. His daughter Katie stood next to him. She was 22 years old and strong. Her brown hair was tied back tight. Her green eyes watched everything with interest. She wore the blue uniform of the Human Marine Corps. "Dad, look at that." "One," Katie said. She pointed at a huge black ship that looked like a giant bug. "It's bigger than our whole base back home," Jake smiled. "That's a Korthak warship. The beings inside are made of living crystal. They're very strong." "How strong?" Katie asked. "Strong enough to punch through steel walls," Jake said. "But don't worry about that now." Katie laughed. "I'm not worried. I'm excited." The space station was called New Horizon. It was as big as a city. Every 5 years it hosted the Galactic Combat Championships. The best fighters from every known species came here to compete. This year, Katie was the human fighter. More ships kept arriving. Jake saw a beautiful white ship with no sharp edges at all. It moved like it was dancing through space. "Alvari," he said to Katie. "They're fast. Faster than anything you've ever seen." "Faster than Linda when she's running from trouble?" Katie asked with a grin. Jake chuckled. Linda was Katie's best friend back on Earth. She was always getting into small problems and running away from them. Much faster than Linda. A red ship arrived next. It didn't look like much, but Jake felt cold when he saw it. The ship seemed to make the air around it feel heavy and sad. "Vexitan," Jake said quietly. "They fight with their minds. They can make you see things that aren't there. They can make you feel so afraid that you can't move." Katie looked at her. "Father, have you fought them before?" "A long time ago," Jake said. "During the border wars, I was young like you." "Did you win?" Jake looked at his daughter. Her eyes were bright and full of confidence. "I survived. That was enough back then." They walked away from the window. The station was full of beings from all over the galaxy. Jake saw tall, thin creatures with blue skin. He saw short, furry things that walked on 4 legs. There were beings made of what looked like living metal. Others seemed to be made of pure energy. All of them stared at Katie as she walked by. Some looked curious. Others looked like they thought she was a joke. A few looked hungry, like they wanted to eat her. Katie didn't seem to notice. She walked with her head up and her shoulders back. She moved like a soldier, but also like a dancer. Every step was sure and balanced. They reached the main arena. It was huge. The floor was made of some kind of white metal that never got dirty. The walls went up so high that Jake couldn't see the top. Seats for thousands of beings filled the space around the fighting area. In the center of the arena stood a tall, beautiful woman. Her skin was pale white. Her hair was silver and seemed to move by itself. Her eyes were purple and glowed like small stars. She wore a long dress that looked like it was made of starlight. "That's Lyra Leigh Starweaver," Jake said. "She runs this tournament." Lyra Leigh's voice filled the arena without any speakers. It was magic, Jake knew. Elvari magic. "Welcome, fighters of the galaxy," Lyra Leigh said. Her voice was beautiful but cold. "You have come here to prove your worth. Only the strongest will survive." She looked around the arena. Her eyes stopped on each fighter for a moment. When she looked at Katie, her lips turned up in a small, mean smile. "The rules are simple," Lyra Leigh continued. "One fight at a time. No weapons except what nature gave you. Fight until your opponent cannot continue or gives up. The winner moves on. The loser goes home." Jake watched the other fighters. There was Zara Ironscale, a Korthak warrior who looked like she was made of red crystal. Her arms were as thick as tree trunks. When she moved, the floor shook a little. There was Veltar Shadow Dance, an Elvari fighter who moved so fast that she seemed to disappear and appear in different places. Her silver hair flowed behind her like water. There was Nyx Mindrender, a Vextan who wore black robes. Her face was hidden, but Jake could feel her mind pressing against his thoughts like cold fingers. And there was Thane Starbreaker, The Korthak champion. He was huge, even for his people. His crystal skin was black with streaks of gold. When he breathed, it sounded like thunder. All of these fighters looked at Katie like she was a small child who had wandered into the wrong place. A Korthak diplomat sitting near Jake spoke in a voice like grinding rocks. "Human, why do you look so calm? Your young one will be crushed." Jake didn't take his eyes off Katie. She was stretching now, getting ready for her first fight. Her movements were smooth and controlled. She looked small next to the alien fighters, but she didn't look afraid. "You haven't seen what humans can do when they really want something," Jake said quietly. The diplomat laughed. It sounded like boulders falling down a mountain. "What can humans do? You have no crystal armor, no speed like the Elvari, no mind powers like the Vextan. You are soft and weak." Jake finally looked at the diplomat. His eyes were calm, but hard. "We learn," he said. "We adapt. We never give up." The diplomat stopped laughing. Lyrelay raised her hand. "Let the tournament begin." The crowd roared. Thousands of voices from dozens of species filled the air. Katie looked up at her father in the stands. He gave her a small nod. She nodded back and walked to the center of the arena. Her first opponent was already waiting. Katie stood in the center of the fighting area. The white metal floor was cold under her feet. She could hear her heart beating, but it was steady and strong. She was not afraid. Across from her stood Zara Ironscale. The Korthak warrior was huge. Her crystal skin was deep red like dried blood. Her arms were bigger than Katie's whole body. When Zara moved, her crystal armor made sounds like breaking glass. Zara looked down at Katie and laughed. "Little human girl, you should go home to your mother. This is no place for soft things like you." Katie said nothing. She just watched Zara's feet, her hands, her shoulders. Her father had taught her that a fighter's body always told the truth even when their mouth lied. "Begin." Lyralay's voice rang out. Zara charged forward like a bull. The floor shook with each step. Her massive fist came down where Katie had been standing. But Katie was not there anymore. She had moved to the side at the last second. Zara's fist hit the metal floor with a sound like thunder. The floor cracked in a spiderweb pattern around the impact. "Hold still, little mouse," Zara roared. She swung her other fist. Katie ducked under the punch. She could feel the air move above her head. If that punch had hit her, it would have broken every bone in her body. The crowd was getting excited. Beings from all over the galaxy were shouting and cheering. Most of them were cheering for Zara. Jake watched from the stands. His face was calm, but his hands gripped the rail in front of him. Next to him, the Korthak diplomat was laughing. "Your daughter runs well," the diplomat said, "but she cannot run forever." Jake said nothing. He watched Katie move around Zara's attacks. She was not just running away, she was learning. Every punch Zara threw, Katie watched carefully. She was studying her opponent. Down in the arena, Zara was getting angry. She had been fighting for many years. She had never had trouble hitting an opponent before. But this small human was like, "Trying to catch smoke, stop running and fight me," Zara yelled. Katie finally spoke. "Okay," she said simply. Zara grinned. Her crystal teeth looked like knives. She pulled back her fist for her strongest punch. This would end the fight. But Katie did something no one expected. Instead of running away, she ran toward Zara. The crowd gasped. Even Jake leaned forward in his seat. Katie ducked under Zara's punch and grabbed the Korthak's arm. She used Zara's own strength and anger against her. Katie spun around, pulling Zara off balance. The huge warrior stumbled forward. Katie jumped up and wrapped her arm around Zara's thick neck. She squeezed tight and held on. Zara tried to shake Katie off, but the human held on like a tick on a dog. The more Zara struggled, the tighter Katie squeezed. "Impossible," someone in the crowd whispered. Zara's crystal skin was hard, but Katie had found the soft spot every being had, the place where blood and air flowed to the brain. She pressed hard on that spot. Zara's struggles became weaker. Her crystal armor started to change color from red to pale pink. She was running out of air. "I give up," Zara gasped. Katie let go immediately and jumped back. Zara fell to her knees, breathing hard. The arena was silent for a moment. Then a few beings started to clap. Soon more joined in. The sound grew louder. Katie walked over to Zara and held out her hand. "Good fight," she said. Zara looked at the human's small hand. Then she smiled and took it. Katie helped pull the big warrior to her feet. "How did you know where to squeeze?" Zara asked. "All living things need air," Katie said. "My father taught me that." Up in the stands, Jake smiled for the first time since the tournament began. But Katie's fights were not over. The tournament was single elimination, but there were still many rounds to go. Her next opponent was announced, Veltar Shadowdance, the Elvari speed fighter. Veltar stepped onto the fighting floor like she was floating. Her silver hair moved in a wind that no one else could feel. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow from inside. Her eyes were like liquid gold. "I will not make the same mistake as the rock woman," Veltar said. Her voice sounded like music. "I will end this quickly," the crowd murmured. Everyone knew about Elvari speed. They could move faster than the eye could follow. Some said they could move so fast they could be in two places at once. "Begin," Lyrelei called. Veltar disappeared. Katie spun around, looking for her opponent. She could hear the sound of feet on metal, but she could not see where it was coming from. A fist appeared out of nowhere and hit Katie in the shoulder. She stumbled but did not fall. Before she could recover, another punch hit her in the back. The crowd cheered. This was what they expected. The Elvari were showing why they were considered the best fighters in the galaxy. Katie touched her shoulder where she had been hit. It hurt, but nothing was broken. Veltar was fast, but she was not hitting as hard as she could. She was playing with her opponent. "Too slow, human." Veltar's voice came from everywhere at once. "Give up now and save yourself more pain." Another punch hit Katie in the side, then one on her leg. Katie did not try to block or dodge. Instead, she closed her eyes. "What is she doing?" Someone in the crowd asked. Jake knew. He had taught Katie this when she was young. "When you cannot see your enemy," he had told her, "use your other senses." Katie listened. She heard Veltar's feet on the metal floor. She felt the small movements of air when the Elvari moved past her. She even smelled the strange flower scent that all Elvari had. Veltar appeared behind Katie for another strike. But this time, Katie was ready. She spun around and grabbed Veltar's wrist as the punch came. The Elvari's eyes went wide with surprise. "How did you?" Veltar started to say. Katie did not let her finish. She pulled Veltar forward and threw her over her shoulder. The Elvari hit the floor hard. Veltar tried to disappear again, but Katie held onto her wrist. She dragged the Elvari to her feet and looked her in the eyes. "Speed is good," Katie said, "but patterns are better." She had been listening to Veltar's movements. The Elvari always moved in the same way. 3 quick steps to the left, then an attack from behind. Always the same pattern. Veltar tried to break free, but Katie's grip was strong. The human spun around and threw Veltar across the arena. The Elvari hit the wall and slid to the floor. Katie walked over to where Veltar lay. The Elvari was conscious but dazed. "Do you give up?" Katie asked. Veltar looked up at her. There was no anger in her golden eyes, only surprise. "Yes," she said quietly. "I give up." Katie helped her to her feet, just like she had done with Zara. The crowd was no longer just clapping. They were cheering loudly. Even some of the Elvari in the stands were standing up. Up in the spectator area, more beings were looking at Jake with curious eyes. An Elvari noble with purple skin leaned over to him. "How did your daughter defeat our speed?" the noble asked. Jake's eyes never left Katie as she walked off the fighting floor. "I taught her to listen," he said simply. "Listen to what?" "Everything." Katie had won her first 2 fights. The arena was buzzing with talk about the human girl who had beaten both crystal strength and elvish speed. But now she faced something much more dangerous. Nyx Mindrender stood across from Katie on the fighting floor. The Vextan warrior wore long black robes that covered her whole body. Only her eyes could be seen. They were completely white, like stars that had gone cold. The crowd was quieter now. Everyone knew about Vextan mind powers. They could reach into a fighter's thoughts and twist them. They could make brave warriors cry like babies. They could make strong fighters fall down without even being touched. "This one will be different," someone whispered in the stands. Jake sat forward in his seat. This was the fight he had worried about most. Not because Katie could not handle pain or strength, but because fighting a Vextan meant fighting your own mind. Human child. Nyx spoke without moving her mouth. Her voice came from inside Katie's head. "You have done well so far, but this ends now. I will show you horrors that will break your spirit." Katie felt something cold touch her thoughts. It was like ice water being poured into her brain. She shivered but did not step back. "Begin," Lyrelei called. Immediately Katie's world changed. She was no longer in the arena. She was back on Earth, but everything was wrong. The sky was red like blood. The trees were all dead and black. She could smell smoke and hear screaming in the distance. "This is your future." Nyx's voice echoed around her. "This is what happens when humans try to be more than they are. You will all burn." Katie felt fear creep up her spine. The vision was so real she could taste the ash in the air. But then she remembered something her father had told her when she was little and had nightmares. "Monsters are only scary if you let them be," he had said. "Fear is just another feeling. You can choose what to do with it." Katie closed her eyes in the vision. When she opened them, she was back in the arena. But the fear was still there, trying to paralyze her. Instead of fighting the fear, Katie did something else. She grabbed it and made it her own. The fear became fuel. It made her stronger, more focused. Nyx stepped back in surprise. Her white eyes flickered. "Impossible. My fear should have frozen you." "It did scare me," Katie said, walking forward. "But humans use fear differently than other species." Nyx tried again. This time she filled Katie's mind with images of pain. Katie saw herself being broken and beaten. She felt agony that was not real but seemed completely true. Again, Katie did not resist. She took the pain and transformed it. Every wave of hurt became determination. Every vision of defeat became reason to keep fighting. The crowd was watching something they had never seen before. Katie was walking steadily toward Nyx, while the Vextan's most powerful attacks had no effect. "What is happening?" an alien voice asked from the stands. Jake knew. "Humans don't break the same way other species do," he said to the being sitting near him. "We've spent thousands of years learning to turn bad things into strength. Down in the arena." Nyx was starting to panic. She had never faced a mind like this before. Every attack she made only seemed to make the human stronger. "Stop," Nyx said out loud for the first time. "This is not possible. My powers work on all thinking beings." "They do work," Katie said. She was close now, only a few steps away. "But you don't understand humans very well." Katie thought about her father. She thought about all the stories he had told her about human history, about people who had survived terrible things and became stronger because of them, about soldiers who kept fighting when everything seemed hopeless, about ordinary people who did extraordinary things when they had to. Nyx tried one last attack. She reached deep into Katie's mind and pulled out her worst memory. The day Katie's mother had died in a transport accident. She made Katie feel that loss all over again, fresh and sharp like it had just happened. For a moment, Katie stopped walking. Tears came to her eyes. The pain was real and deep. But then she smiled. "Thank you," Katie said. "What?" Nyx was confused. "You reminded me why I fight," Katie said. "My mother always told me to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. She said that was what made humans special." Katie reached out and grabbed Nyx's arm. The Vextan tried to pull away, but Katie held on tight. "You use fear as a weapon," Katie said. "But fear is also what makes us brave. You can't break something that gets stronger when it bends." She pulled Nyx forward and wrapped her arm around the Vextan's neck just like she had done with Zara. But this time it was different. Nyx was trying to attack Katie's mind while Katie was choking her. It became a battle of will against will, mental power against human stubbornness. Katie felt her thoughts being pushed and pulled. She felt Nyx trying to make her let go. But Katie had something the Vextan did not understand. She had love. Love for her father watching in the stands. Love for her dead mother. Love for all the humans back on Earth who were counting on her to show the galaxy what they could do. Love was stronger than fear. Love was stronger than pain. Love was stronger than the darkness Nyx tried to fill her mind with. Nyx's struggles became weaker. Her mental attacks faded away. Finally, she tapped Katie's arm with her hand. "I surrender," Nyx whispered. Katie let go immediately. Nyx fell to her knees, breathing hard. She looked up at Katie with new understanding in her white eyes. "How?" Nyx asked. "Humans are good at loving things," Katie said, helping the Vextan to her feet. "That makes us good at protecting things too." The arena exploded in cheers. Even the Vextan in the crowd were standing and clapping. They had never seen anyone resist their people's mental powers before. Up in the stands, an Elvari noble turned to Jake. "Your daughter just defeated a mind attack. How is this possible?" Jake watched Katie wave to the crowd. His chest felt warm with pride. "Humans have been fighting monsters in their heads for thousands of years," he said. "We call them nightmares, sadness, fear, anger. Katie learned early that you don't run from those monsters. You make friends with them." "Make friends with fear?" the noble asked. "Fear keeps you alive," Jake said. "Anger gives you strength. Sadness teaches you what matters. Humans don't try to get rid of these feelings. We learn to use them." Down in the arena, Katie was walking toward the exit, but Lyrelei Starweaver called her name. "Katie Murphy," the tournament director said. Her voice carried across the whole arena. "You have done something remarkable. You have reached the semifinals." The crowd cheered again. Katie looked up at her father and smiled. He smiled back and gave her a small nod. But Jake knew the hardest fights were still coming. Katie had beaten strength, speed, and mental powers. Now she would face something even more dangerous. She would face a legend. The semifinal match was announced and the entire arena fell silent. Katie would fight Thane Starbreaker, the Korthak champion, who had never lost a battle in 20 years of fighting. Thane stepped onto the fighting floor, and the metal beneath. His feet cracked just from his weight. He was the biggest Korthak anyone had ever seen. His crystal skin was black with veins of gold running through it like lightning. His arms were as thick as tree trunks, and his hands could crush stone to powder. The crowd had gone from excited to worried. Many beings were whispering prayers for Katie. Even some of the humans in the stands looked afraid. "This is madness," a Korthak diplomat said to Jake. "Thane has killed opponents by accident. He does not know his own strength sometimes." Jake's jaw was tight, but his voice was steady. "Katie knows what she's doing. No one knows what they are doing against Thane Starbreaker," the diplomat replied. "He is called the Destroyer for good reason." Down in the arena, Thane looked at Katie like she was an insect that had wandered into his path. "Little human," his voice rumbled like an earthquake. "I do not wish to hurt you badly. Surrender now and you can go home with honor." Katie looked up at the massive warrior. The top of her head barely reached his chest. "Thank you for the offer," she said politely. "But I came here to fight, not to quit." Thane nodded slowly. "Very well. I will try to make it quick." "Begin!" Lyrelei's voice rang out. Thane did not charge like Zara had. He was smarter than that. He walked forward slowly, cutting off Katie's escape routes. His massive hands were ready to grab her. Katie did not run. She stood still and watched Thane approach. The crowd held its breath. When Thane was close enough, he reached for Katie with both hands. But she ducked under his arms and rolled between his legs. She came up behind him and jumped onto his back. Thane tried to reach behind himself to grab her, but his huge muscles got in the way. Katie held on tight and started hitting pressure points on his neck and shoulders. "Get off me!" Thane roared. He spun around and threw himself backward, trying to crush Katie against the arena wall. Katie let go at the last second and rolled away. Thane hit the wall so hard that cracks spread out from the impact like a spider web. Jake watched his daughter move around the giant warrior. She was not trying to hurt Thane with her attacks. She was studying him. Every time he moved, she learned something new about how he fought. Thane pulled himself away from the wall and turned to face Katie. There was respect in his black eyes now. "You are quick, little one. But this fight must end." He picked up a piece of broken wall, a chunk of metal as big as Katie's whole body, and threw it at her. Katie dove to the side, and the metal crashed into the arena floor with a sound like thunder. "Now I understand," Katie said to herself. She had been watching Thane's fighting style for several minutes now. She knew his patterns. Thane was strong, but he was also old. He had been fighting the same way for decades. His moves were perfect, but they were predictable. Like a machine that always did the same thing, Katie started moving differently. Instead of just avoiding Thane's attacks, she began to anticipate them. She was where his punches were going to be before he even threw them. The crowd watched in amazement as the tiny human seemed to dance around the giant warrior. Thane's fists moved like hammers, but they never quite hit their target. "Impossible," someone whispered. "No one has ever made Thane miss so many times." Thane was getting frustrated. Sweat was beginning to show on his crystal skin. He had never had to work this hard in a fight before. "Hold still," he bellowed, swinging a massive fist at Katie's head. Katie ducked and grabbed Thane's wrist as his arm went past. She used his own momentum to pull him off balance. The giant warrior stumbled forward. Katie jumped up and hit Thane in the back of his knee, a pressure point her father had taught her. Thane's leg buckled, and he fell to one knee. For the first time in 20 years, the destroyer was kneeling in a fight. The arena erupted in shocked gasps and cheers. No one had ever brought Thane Starbreaker to his knees before. But Thane was not finished. He roared in anger and swept his arm in a wide circle, trying to knock Katie down. She jumped over his arm and landed on his shoulder. "You fight well, human," Thane said, breathing hard. "But I am still stronger." "Yes, you are," Katie agreed. "But strength without wisdom is just noise." She wrapped her arms around Thane's thick neck and squeezed tight. It was the same hold she had used on Zara and Nyx. But Thane was much bigger and stronger. Thane tried to grab Katie and pull her off, but she was positioned where his big hands could not reach her easily. He stood up and tried to ram her against the wall again. Katie held on. When Thane hit the wall, she absorbed the impact and squeezed tighter. "I will not lose," Thane gasped. "You don't have to lose," Katie said in his ear. "You just have to learn when to stop fighting." Thane struggled for another minute, but Katie's hold was perfect. She was cutting off the blood flow to his brain, just like she had done with the others. Slowly, his struggles became weaker. The great Thane Starbreaker, who had never been defeated, felt darkness creeping into his vision. "I surrender," he whispered. Katie let go immediately and jumped down from his back. Thane fell forward onto his hands and knees, breathing hard. The arena was completely silent for a long moment. Then one person started clapping. Then another. Soon the entire crowd was on their feet, cheering louder than they had ever cheered before. Katie walked around to face Thane. The giant warrior was still on his knees. She held out her small hand to him. Thane looked at her hand, then at her face. Slowly, a smile spread across his features. He took her hand and let her help him to his feet. "How?" he asked simply. "My father taught me that every fighter has patterns," Katie said. "Even the best ones. You fight like you've been fighting for 20 years. That made you predictable." Thane nodded slowly. "And you fight like you learned something new from every opponent you faced today." "Exactly," Katie said. Up in the stands, the crowd was going wild. Beings from every species were cheering for the human girl who had just defeated the greatest warrior in the galaxy. But Jake was looking at Lyrelei Starweaver. The tournament director's face was hard to read. Her purple eyes were glowing brighter than before. Lyrelei stepped into the center of the arena. Her voice filled the space without any effort. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "we have our final match. Katie Murphy will face—" She paused dramatically. "Me." The crowd gasped. Tournament directors never fought in their own competitions. But Lyrelai was not just any director. She was one of the greatest Elvari warriors who had ever lived. Katie looked up at the beautiful, dangerous woman who floated above the arena floor. She felt a chill run down her spine. This would be her hardest fight yet. Up in the stands, Jake's hands gripped the rail so tight his knuckles turned white. He had fought Elvari before. He knew how dangerous they could be when they really wanted to win. But he also knew his daughter. And he knew that she had come too far to give up now. Lyrelai Starweaver floated down to the arena floor like a falling star. Her silver hair moved in wind that existed only around her. Her dress seemed to be made of moonlight and shadow. When her feet touched the metal floor, it rang like a bell. The crowd was completely silent now. Everyone knew they were about to witness something that had never happened before. The tournament director was going to fight. Katie stood across from Lyrelai and felt the difference immediately. The Elvari woman was not just fast like Veltar had been. She was not just strong like the Korthak warriors. She was something else. Entirely. She was perfect. "Young human," Lyrelai said, her voice like music and ice. "You have impressed me today. You defeated strength with wisdom. You defeated speed with patience. You defeated mental power with will. But now you face something you cannot overcome." "What's that?" Katie asked. "Perfection," Lyrelai replied. "I have been fighting for 300 years. I have studied every martial art in the galaxy. I have never been defeated because I cannot be defeated." Up in the stands, Jake felt his heart pounding. He had fought alongside Elvari during the border wars. He had seen what they could do when they really tried, but he had also seen what humans could do when they were pushed to their limits. "My daughter has come this far," he said quietly to himself. "She won't quit now." "Begin," Lyrelai called out, since there was no one else to start the match. The fight began unlike any of Katie's other battles. Lyrelai did not charge or rush. She moved like water flowing around the arena. Her attacks came from impossible angles, with perfect timing and flawless technique. Katie found herself defending, desperately. Lyrelai's fists and feet moved so fast they were blurs. Each strike was placed exactly where it would do the most damage. Katie could barely block half of them. A kick caught Katie in the ribs and sent her sliding across the floor. Before she could get up, Lyrelai was there, striking down at her. Katie rolled away just in time. "You cannot run forever," Lyrelai said calmly. She was not even breathing hard. "I have all the time in the galaxy." Katie got to her feet and wiped blood from her lip. Lyrelai had been holding back with her other opponents. This was the real power of the Elvari. But as the fight continued, something strange began to happen. Katie started to adapt. She could not match Lyrelai's speed, so she stopped trying. Instead, she began to read the Elvari's movements like she had read Thane's patterns. But Lyrelai was much more complex. Every attack Lyrelai made was different. Every combination was new. But Katie noticed something else. Lyrelai fought like she was dancing. There was a rhythm to her movements, like music that only she could hear. Katie began to move to that same rhythm. "Interesting," Lyrelai said as Katie managed to block a series of strikes that should have been impossible to stop. "You are learning my tempo." "Music is universal," Katie replied, ducking under a spinning kick. "My father taught me that all fighting is like dancing, you just have to find the beat." Lyrelai's eyes narrowed. She increased her speed, but Katie stayed with her. The human was not faster than the Elvari, but she was beginning to anticipate where the attacks would come from. The crowd watched in amazement as the fight became more like a dance than a battle. Both fighters moved with incredible grace, their attacks and defenses flowing like water. But Katie was taking more damage. Her human body could not absorb punishment the way crystal skin or Elvari magic could. She was bleeding from several cuts, and her breathing was getting heavy. "You fight well," Lyrelei admitted as they circled each other. "Better than any human I have ever seen, but you are mortal. You will tire, you will slow down, and then I will win." Katie nodded. "You're right. I can't keep this up forever." "Then surrender with honor," Lyrelei said. "You have proven that humans belong among the galaxy's warriors." "No," Katie said firmly. "I haven't proven that yet." She closed her eyes for a moment, just like she had done when fighting Veltar. But this time she was not listening for sounds. She was listening for something else. She was listening for her father's voice. All her life, Jake had told her stories about human heroes. Not the perfect ones from movies, but the real ones. People who won not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they refused to give up when giving up made sense. "Humans don't win by being perfect," Katie said, opening her eyes. "We win by being stubborn." She charged at Lyrelei, but not the way the Korthak had charged. This was different. This was desperate and wild and completely unpredictable. Lyrelei had studied every fighting style in the galaxy, but she had never studied human desperation. Katie threw punches that made no sense, kicks that should not have worked, and grabs that ignored all proper technique. For the first time in the fight, Lyrelei looked surprised. She blocked Katie's attacks, but barely. The human was fighting, like someone who had nothing to lose. "This is not proper technique," Lyrelei said, stepping back. "I know," Katie replied, pressing her attack. "But it's working." She was right. Lyrelei's perfect technique was designed to counter other perfect techniques. She did not know how to fight against someone who broke all the rules. Katie grabbed Lyrelei's wrist and spun around, throwing the Elvari across the arena. Lyrelei landed gracefully, but for the first time, she looked off balance. "Impossible," Lyrelei whispered. "How are you doing this?" Katie smiled through her bloody lip. "Because I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to win." The final exchange came quickly. Lyrelei gathered all her power for one perfect, devastating attack. Her whole body glowed with silver light as she flew toward Katie like a shooting star. Katie did not try to block or dodge. Instead, she did something that made no sense at all. She reached out and hugged Lyrelei as the Elvari's attack hit her. The two fighters crashed to the ground together. For a moment, neither moved. Then Katie pushed herself up. She was hurt badly, but she was still conscious. Lyrelei lay beneath her, stunned by the impact of her own attack. Katie managed to wrap her arm around Lyrelei's neck in the same hold she had used on all her other opponents, but her grip was weak from her injuries. "I can break free," Lyrelei said quietly. "You do not have the strength to hold me." "I know," Katie whispered back. "But do you really want to?" Lyrelei looked up into Katie's eyes. For 300 years she had been the perfect warrior. She had never lost because she could not imagine losing. But this human girl had shown her something new. "You fought perfectly," Katie continued. "But you fought like you were afraid to lose. I fought like someone who was not afraid to fail." Lyrelei was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. A real smile, not the cold one she had worn before. "I surrender," she said clearly. The arena exploded in noise. Thousands of beings from dozens of species cheered louder than they ever had before. The human had won. The impossible had happened. Katie let go of Lyrelei and collapsed onto her back, breathing hard. Every part of her body hurt, but she was smiling. Lyrelei sat up and looked down at her. "How?" the Elvari asked. "How did you defeat perfection?" "By not trying. To be perfect," Katie said. "Humans are good at being imperfect. We're good at making mistakes and learning from them. We're good at failing and getting back up." Jake was already running down to the arena floor. He pushed through the crowd of officials and medics until he reached his daughter. Katie saw him, coming, and tried to sit up. "Dad, did you see?" "I saw everything," Jake said, kneeling beside her. His eyes were bright with tears. He was trying not to cry. "I'm so proud of you." "I won," Katie said like she still could not believe it. "You did more than win," Jake said. "You showed them what humans can do." Lyrelei approached them. She moved with her usual grace, but there was something different about her now. She seemed more real, less like a perfect statue. She bowed deeply to Katie, something no Elvari had ever done to any human. "We have measured strength by the gifts we were born with," Lyrelai said in a voice that carried across the entire arena. "You have shown us that true strength comes from the gifts we earn." She turned to address the crowd. "Let this day be remembered. The human Katie Murphy has not just won a tournament. She has proven that any being from any species can achieve greatness through will and determination." The crowd cheered again, but Jake heard something else in their voices now. It was not just excitement. It was respect. Later, as medics treated Katie's injuries, she looked up at her father. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me you knew this would happen?" Jake smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Because I didn't know you would win, I just knew you wouldn't quit." "What's the difference?" "All the difference in the galaxy," Jake said. "Winning is about being better than your opponent. Not quitting is about being better than yourself." Katie thought about that for a moment. Then she smiled. "I like that better than winning." "Good," Jake said, "because that's what makes you human." As they left the arena together, father and daughter, the galaxy watched with new eyes. The humans had arrived, not as conquerors or supplicants, but as equals. And that changed everything. The tournament was over, but the real story was just beginning.